Thank you very much. We had a busy day. We're dealing with lots of different people on lots of different things. We had some terrific people in today and trying to solve some of the problems that are going on in the country and outside of the country. We're doing very well with respect to other countries really behaving on taking the criminals that they sent into our country, and we're getting them out. These are some of the worst people on earth, and they're getting out and they're being accepted back in their countries, as you've heard, without exception. So a lot of people thought that was not going to happen, but it's happening very full force. And we're getting some very, very dangerous people out of our country, which is very important. Will, perhaps we'll go through the first one, please.
Yes, sir. So earlier today, before the press came in, you signed a commission appointing Chris Wright to be your next Secretary of Energy. We have another commission prepared for your signature, sir. This is Doug Collins to be Secretary of the VA, Doug Collins of Georgia.
Two very good men. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Next up, in light of numerous actions taken by a number of bodies of the United Nations, which exhibit a deep anti-American bias, we have an executive order prepared for your attention that would withdraw the United States from the UN Human Rights Council, would withdraw the United States from the UNRWA, which is a refugee organization, and would also review American involvement in UNESCO, which has also exhibited anti-American bias. More generally, the executive order calls for a review of American involvement and funding in the UN in light of the wild disparities in levels of funding among different countries that, as you've expressed previously, is deeply unfair to the United States.
So I've always felt that the UN has tremendous potential. It's not living up to that potential right now. It really isn't, hasn't for a long time. It has, there are great hopes for it, but it's not being well run, to be honest, and they're not doing the job. A lot of these conflicts that we're working on should be settled, or at least we should have some help in settling them. We never seem to get help. That should be the primary purpose of the UN, the United Nations. And again, it's got great potential, and based on the potential, we'll continue to go along with it, but they got to get their act together.
What would they need to do, sir, to get their act together?
Well, they got to be fair to countries that deserve fairness. They have some countries, as you know, that are outliers, that are very bad, and they're being almost preferred as countries to those that do their job and are doing a good job, and they have to really, they're going to end up losing, a lot of countries, they're going to end up losing their credibility like other organizations, and then they're going to be nothing. The potential of the United Nations, and not everybody agrees with me on this, the potential of the United Nations is fantastic if properly run. So we'll see what happens.
How much money are you willing to take away from them?
Well, we're taking away a little bit, but we're not looking to take away money. This is so important that we're really, as you know, the United Nations is largely funded by us. But, and it shouldn't be, it should be funded by everybody, but we're disproportionate, as we always seem to be. But it's something that if it ever lived up to the potential, in 10 minutes it would make up the difference. That's the kind of power it could have. Right now it doesn't have that power.
Next, sir, this is a national security presidential memorandum that seeks to impose maximum pressure on the government of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Many of these provisions are similar to actions that your administration took during your first administration. The basic idea here is to have every department and agency, or many departments and agencies in your government attempt to sanction and control Iranian activities, particularly relating to the Iranian nuclear program and the Iranian export of terrorism through support of various proxy groups abroad. And the intent here is to give you all of the possible tools to, I'd say, engage with the Iranian government to ensure that going forward they're less of a malign actor on the world stage.
So this is one that I'm torn about. Everybody wants me to sign it. I'll do that. It's very tough on Iran. It's what we had before. We would have never had the problem. You would have never had October 7th. We would have never had the problem had the election gone the different way, which it should have. But this one, I think, more than made up for it. I think we're doing things and it shows that more than made up for it, much more historic. The Iran situation, hopefully, I'm going to sign it, but hopefully we're not going to have to use it very much. We will see whether or not we can arrange or work out a deal with Iran and everybody can live together, and maybe that's possible and maybe it's not possible. So I'm signing this and I'm unhappy to do it, but I really have not so much choice because we have to be strong and firm, and I hope that it's not going to have to be used in any great measure at all. It'd be great if we could have a Middle East and maybe a world at total peace. Right now you don't have that. When I left, you had peace all over the world, and now you have the world is blowing up. As you know, Bibi is coming in to see me later. Others are coming in to see me. We'll see what we can do. But I'm signing this, and hopefully it will be a document which won't be very important, will hardly have to be used.
So what kind of deal would you be prepared to
Well,
make
we're going to
with
see. I mean, we're going to see. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. With me, it's very simple. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. We don't want to be tough on Iran. We don't want to be tough on anybody, but they just can't have a nuclear weapon.
Mr. President, are you going to engage in conversations with your counterpart in Iran?
I would.
Do you want to block the sale of Iranian oil to other nations?
Well, we have the right to do that, and that's what I did before, and they had no money. They wouldn't have had the money for Hamas or Hezbollah or anybody else. It could have been solved. This thing, it just, if things went the way they should have, this would have been over long ago, but it's not over.
How
And,
close do you think Iran is to developing nuclear weapons?
I think they're close. I think they're close. They're too close. But again, you could go back 4 years, I would have said they would have had it during this intervening period. But they're pretty close, Peter.
And why say that you're unhappy to sign it if it's Iran and their proxies who have threatened to retaliate against you and your team by killing you guys for taking out Soleimani?
Well, they haven't done that, and that would be a terrible thing for them to do. Not because of me. If they did that, they would be obliterated. That'd be the end. I've left instructions. If they do it, they get obliterated. There won't be anything left. And they shouldn't be able to do it. And Biden should have said that, but he never did. I don't know why, lack of intelligence, perhaps. But he never said it. If that happens to a leader, or close to a leader, frankly, if you had other people involved also, you would call for total obliteration of a state that did it. That would include Iran. So I'm signing this, and it's a very powerful document, but hopefully we're not going to have to use it.
Mr. President, if the Prime Minister today were to ask your help in striking at Iran's nuclear facilities to prevent the kind of progress towards a nuclear weapon, would you give him the green light? Would you, either to do it himself or for the U.S. to participate with him?
I don't know that that's what he's going to be asking for. I have no idea that it is. You're telling me. We're going to have a pretty long meeting. We're going to be discussing a lot of things, not only that, but a lot of things. And I'll let you know if the time comes to let you know. But right now, that's not something that I can discuss.
Mr. President, when you said if they do it, they get obliterated. Just to be clear, you're talking about if Iran made an attempt on your life.
Yeah, that would be called total obliteration. And I can't imagine they do that. It should have been stated by Biden, but he didn't state it because he had no clue, as you know, as
Mr.
everybody
President,
knows.
what is your vision actually for relationship
Do you
with
have anything
Iran?
else?
No, that's all we have.
My vision for
For a
what?
relationship with Iran, and would you?
I'd love to have a good relationship with everybody. They can't have a nuclear weapon. That was the only thing that was very important. They can't have a nuclear weapon. Beyond that, it would be very tough if they insist on doing that. They have some of their leadership, I can tell you right now, and maybe you know it, maybe you don't. but there are many people at the top ranks of Iran that do not want to have a nuclear weapon just for that very reason.